Derek Hunter, host of the Derek Hunter podcast, columnist and political consultant, thank you so much for your time today. There are rumours swirling that the White House is grooming California Governor Gavin Newsom to take Joe Biden's place as the nominee or as the president. How accurate do you think these rumours are?
Well, I think they want somebody in the wings. I think that the Democratic establishment definitely wants somebody in the wings because you don't know when the wheels are going to fall off Joe Biden. It's a year away from the election right now. That is forever in politics, and it's forever for an 81-year-old. So you've got to have somebody waiting, ready to go should something happen, either something horrible or something maybe he comes to the realization that he really is too senile to run. And the number two that they currently have in place, Kamala Harris, is about the only politician in the country less popular than Joe Biden. So she's not really a viable alternative. If you look down the Democrats' bench, they don't have anybody. If you lived in this country and you follow politics in this country, Maddie, who name three Democratic stars? You can't. There aren't any. Who's the most successful Democratic governor? I don't know. Kathy Hochul in New York is wildly unpopular in New York. The Democrats that are known nationally are known because they are unpopular at home or their major cities are run over with crime. Gavin Newsom is the same way. His state lost almost 700,000 people over the last couple of years. His major cities are overrun with crime, but he's the kind of consummate politician that can look at that and just smile and tell you how great things are. And he's got a great head of hair and he's fit and he's got a lot of energy and he could sell ice cubes to an Eskimo in the middle of winter if he really had to. And that's appealing to Democrats. That's appealing to a large part of the population, sadly. So he's the most viable alternative they have. But they have a problem. In order to get him, they have to bump Kamala Harris aside if it were to come to that. Now, they're the party of identity politics. So they've been trained to think that straight white men are the problem for everything. They're the reason for every problem. If they're going to dump aside a black woman, the first female, the first black vice president, for a straight white guy who also happens to have been born rich, it's gonna be some real gymnastics there. But they really want to because Kamala Harris cannot get elected. She's wildly unpopular, and there's nobody else. So he's the best of what they have. That doesn't make him good, but he is the best of what they have.
Do you think this is Gavin Newsom throwing his hat in the ring for the position, or do you think that the White House is thinking they're out of options and need someone to put in?
Gavin Newsom wants to be president. Under normal circumstances, if Trump had won in 2020, Gavin Newsom would be running right now. He would be. It's his time. There's a sweet spot for politicians when they haven't hit their sell-by date, their expiration date, and they still have time left in office, but they're not too green in office where they should run and they'd have the best shot. If you look at Chris Christie in 2012, when he decided not to run, he missed his window. By 2016, he was expired. But that's why Ron DeSantis in Florida has to run now. If he were to run in 2028 instead, hold off until then, he will have been out of office for 2 years and done nothing, and have no active record and no platform to really garner attention and to get things done. Gavin Newsom is the governor of the most populous state. It's still an economic powerhouse, if only by default. So now is his time. So it's him offering himself up and the White House saying, or the Democratic establishment, I should say, saying, okay, let's see where this goes without making any sort of commitment.
We saw the California governor meeting with Xi Jinping last week in China to discuss climate change. Is that a normal occurrence to have a state leader visit one of America's most controversial rivals?
It's not unheard of. It's not unprecedented, but it is normally done by people with aspirations for higher office who are actively seeking them or will soon. That being said, Xi Jinping isn't taking Joe Biden's phone calls. Apparently, he's not really having much luck in making any inroads in China. He's already sent 4 cabinet officials over there, and all of them have come up empty-handed. They won't meet on the international stage. So it is a way for Gavin Newsom to show the establishment that he can get in the room with Xi, unlike Joe Biden. So we'll see. But it's Gavin Newsom has an audience at home in California that he wants to appeal to. There's a heavy population from China in California. There's a lot of the manufacturing from Silicon Valley is done largely in China, so he has reasons to go there. It's not a completely illegitimate or completely political move, but you bet dollars to donuts that all the B-roll in his future campaign ads, be it this time or in 2028, they will include him standing there glad-handing with Xi Jinping.
Joe Biden just needs to get to next November to win the election to keep government in Democrat hands. But what is the actual likelihood that the president will make it another 4 years to 2028?
It's wildly unlikely. It's wildly unlikely that he'll last 4 more staircases. If you watch the guy climb up a set of stairs, Vegas is giving him about a 25% chance. You get 4-to-1 odds if you bet against him making it up the stairs. So I don't know. Watching Joe Biden campaign, watching him be president, is a lot like sitting idly by and watching elder abuse. You almost feel compelled to do something to stop it. He'll whisper, he'll go in and then he starts yelling for no reason whatsoever. And then he repeats stories that have been proven to be false, that even he in other circumstances have admitted to be false. Like he's a champion in the civil rights movement, was marching there and this, that, and the other. I mean, so much of the man's life is a lie that I think he may well believe it. So him making it another 4 days is always kind of a crapshoot. Another 4 years, I just don't know. I know that the American public want it to because Kamala Harris is sitting there in the wings. So if he were to be elected, there would be a whole lot of people rooting for him in that sense.
Do you think in November next year his age is going to be his biggest downfall when voters are heading to the polls?
It's not going to help, but if we're still paying $4 for gas, if you can't get out of a grocery store for less than $60, even if you just stop in for a couple of things, that's going to be the biggest thing. For the most part, who the president is doesn't matter on a daily basis. What matters is what comes into your pocket and what goes out of it. And if a president is seen as having created less going in and more going out, that's going to be a bigger problem. And the inflation, they've sort of stopped using the Bidenomics because they realized that, you can't convince people you don't know how good you've got it. It was sort of what they were trying to do economically. And everybody remembered going to the grocery store. Everybody remembered paying their utility bills. Going, no, I'm pretty sure I know exactly how I've got it. So they've moved away from that. If that doesn't change, if inflation doesn't really come down, not stop going up, but come down, that's going to be a bigger factor than his age, which his age will make it more difficult for him to argue that he's doing a good job. But I'm not sure it will cause that many people to vote against him, especially if Donald Trump is the nominee and he's right up there with him.
Basically, since he was sworn into office, GOP members have been pressuring the White House to make Joe Biden sit a cognitive exam the same way Trump did in 2018 to prove that he's sound of mind and fit to run the country. How likely do you think it is that his team will get him to sit the exam? And if they did, would he pass?
There's no chance at all. Under any circumstances, they will allow that. Even if just from a political standpoint, you shouldn't answer hypotheticals about what if you lose? Will you accept that you shouldn't do that? And you shouldn't even entertain the idea of sitting. Once you sit down to prove you have the mental capacity to be president, you've got a whole bunch of people going, he's sitting down. That must mean that he at least suspects that he doesn't have the mental capacity to be president. So any advisor who would allow him to do that should be fired immediately or entertain the idea. Would he pass it? I don't think so. No. Look, he's not drooling. He's not sitting in the corner eating paste or anything like that, but he's certainly not with it. He hasn't left a stage in 3 years with any confidence. He goes up there and he kind of robots, or he's like he's doing the robot dance. Like, which way do I go? What do I do? How do I get out of here? Like, you were there for 5 minutes, dude. Where were the stairs you came in on? Go back to that. But he can't handle it. And then there's a 60% chance you'll trip over a nickel on the floor or something. So it's sad. But I he'll never take a cognitive test, and I don't think he could pass it anyway.
Back on to Gavin Newsom. He's had a tumultuous few years with the pandemic, an exodus of people and businesses leaving California, and then he was thrown into a recall election, which he did win. Is he popular enough to gain national voters?
He's on the right side, meaning the left side of all the issues. He is absolutely a stalwart for abortion. He is a stalwart for transitioning children as young as zygotes to whatever gender they happen to decide that they are at the moment. So he's right on all the issues. Look, you're right. The bar in California to get a recall is incredibly low, but politicians most times are beneficiaries of who their opponents are more so than their own skills. California is a wildly important state. It is a wildly diverse state. Economically, it is an engine unto itself. He hasn't completely screwed it up. So he's a viable person. He's an important person in the Democratic Party. He's got a machine out there in California that won't necessarily come and play for the presidential election because California is going for whoever the Democrat is. But as far as House races and possibly flipping back the House, California is wildly important. If he can deliver on those things, he'll raise his stature. If Joe Biden stumbles, he'll raise his stature and he'll be ready to step in. There's nothing but upside for Gavin Newsom politically, personally. For his people who live under his reign, not so much, but they voted for him, so it's hard to feel sorry for them.
If the White House is preparing Gavin Newsom to step in, is that something that Vice President Kamala Harris would be aware of?
They don't like each other. They know each other. They came up in San Francisco together in politics. They don't get along all that well. It's painfully obvious to her. But I think her biggest hurdle isn't Gavin Newsom. It's that she's so wildly unpopular. She was put in charge of the border, and the border has deteriorated to the point that she doesn't go within a country mile of the border now. So she is her biggest enemy. I'm sure that her inner circle is blaming Gavin Newsom, undermining her with the press or whatever, because nobody wants to be honest with politicians and say, the real problem is you, and you're going to have to make some serious changes. So she knows how unpopular she is. I can't imagine this is coming as a surprise. People know, like, nobody likes you. Like, yeah, I know. I get it. You have to go to college campuses where you get class credit to attend a Kamala Harris speech in order to fill up a 200-seat auditorium as vice president of the United States. That's pretty sad. I feel like I could draw bigger than that anywhere. So she's aware of it. And having Gavin Newsom sitting in the wings, having Gavin Newsom meeting with Xi Jinping, having Gavin Newsom going to debate Ron DeSantis on Fox News, that grates on her. It just has to grate on her because she gets a 60 Minutes profile that ends up being mocked roundly on social media for the following week. Like, it's a different world. She may claim racism, she may claim sexism, whatever, but at the end of the day, for all the complaining, it doesn't change the fact that she's a really horrible candidate and she's not done a very good job as vice president. It doesn't matter which bathroom she uses. It doesn't matter what color her skin is.
The VP has failed to gain support from Americans.
I think Joe Biden wants to keep her on the ticket because by comparison, she's the only politician in the world that makes him look good. It's like, I'm 6'5", and if I were around somebody who's 5 feet tall, they'd think I'm a giant. So they'd probably want to run with somebody who's 5'2" or 4'8". So they can at least pick with Tom Cruise isn't going to star in a movie with me because he's a little bit short. But he'll star with a woman and put her in a hole so he could be 2 inches taller than her on screen. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris is that for Joe Biden. By comparison, I'm good.
If on the chance that Joe Biden does win, and he does look to be finishing the 4 years, is Gavin Newsom being used to prepare for 2028? Because at this rate, there is no one else.
They don't have anyone. They have no bench. So yes, Gavin Newsom will definitely be sitting there, not because the party establishment won't be scrambling looking for somebody else, but because Gavin Newsom wants it so desperately. Look, he's worked his way up. The only other options for him would be senator from California or president of the United States. So he definitely wants to be president of the United States. When I worked in the United States Senate, the old joke was the House of Representatives has 435 people who all think they should be in the Senate. The Senate has 100 people who all think they should be president. Governors are the same thing. He's not going to go back and become mayor of San Francisco again. He's not going to become the attorney general of the state. And he's too young and loves himself far too much to ever consider retirement and living off his family's millions. I don't understand why. There are a lot of politicians who stick around far. I mean, Dianne Feinstein just died at 90 years old in the Senate. Mm-hmm. Nancy Pelosi announced she's running for reelection again at 82. And you look at this and you go, do you hate your family? Do you not want to spend any time with your grandchildren? Do you not want to see your kids at all? Like, you've got all the money in the world. You've done everything. You just enjoy yourself. Like, no, maybe you don't want to be around your family, or maybe they don't want to be around you, whatever it is. But they all seem to believe that they are so important that the world couldn't survive without them. Personally, I look forward to proving them wrong.
Derek Hunter, thank you so much for your time today.